Hey everyone, welcome to the August Database Security Office Hours on the Ask Tom platform. My name is Richard Evans. I'm your host and a product manager within Oracle Database Security, joined by my friend and colleague and boss, Russ Lowenthal. Thanks for joining us, Russ. Appreciate it. This call is being recorded. This video will be available on the Ask Tom network here, a few days after. Probably next week is what I'd say. I'll paste the links in the Zoom chat. I know you may not be able to copy them, but hopefully you can click on those links. So if you've not joined us before, welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is the second Wednesday of each month is our Database Security Office Hours. We do this call where we talk about announcements, a technical topic, and then we've got some Q&A. You're welcome to ask questions about just about anything. It might be a quick game of Stump the Chump if you want to ask me something really hard, but we can always pick that up offline later. I'll drop my email in the Zoom chat as well so you can reach out. But we've got 5 years worth of videos out here at this point. We've got a lot. So archives on just about every capability that poll asks you about. So if you've come in, please take a look at that poll and answer those questions if you don't mind. Gives us an idea of where we should spend maybe some office hours time. Either everybody's using it and they want to learn more, or maybe we need to introduce more folks to some of these capabilities or concepts. Let's get to some announcements. Again, here is this GitHub page that I have. I'll paste it in the Zoom chat again. I try to put like cheat sheets out there of the links we talk about. That QR code takes you there. So hopefully you can enjoy the presentation as opposed to going, wait, what was that link? What did he say? Where was that documentation? What was that Moss note? We've got it all. You can go back. There's at least 2 years worth of archives out there now. So you can go back to other presentations and utilize it. Every month we talk about patching. Patches were released. I saw there was an update on July 24th, version 2 of the quarterly patch. Grab that one if you're applying quarterly release updates, which if you're not doing those, then maybe you're doing monthly, or maybe you have to do both. But we want to make sure that you are staying on top of those patches. Take a look at My Oracle Support. Look at oracle.com/security-alerts for information. If you're using RAC, Real Application Clusters, look at fleet patching and provisioning. Create a gold image of your grid infrastructure or your database. Hopefully that'll make patching a little bit easier for you. And then Mike Dietrich, he's the Oracle of Oracles, right? When it comes to patching and upgrading, MikeDietrichDE.com there. Peter Wall and the team are excited to talk about Oracle Key Vault 21.9 that was released last month, toward the end of the month. Some of the new capabilities they've introduced here include selective auditing, faster certificate rotation for those endpoints, access control improvement for REST and SSH connections, as well as a couple new RESTful APIs to identify what's in the wallet, what the wallet name is, some more information there. So great thing about Key Vault, new releases, patches are getting applied, bugs are getting fixed, and then you're getting some new features. So if you're using Key Vault, please upgrade to that 21.9 release. If you're exploring Key Vault, this version is available out on our Oracle Live Labs platform where you can get your hands on and kick the tires. And I'll give you that link here in a couple slides, okay? DataSafe has some announcements as well. So the July 2024 patches or updates or feature enhancements for Oracle DataSafe bring you selective sensitive data discovery. So you can select specific tables within that schema and only run discovery on those. Couple new TLS options there where you can do one-way or mutual TLS, as well as support for different file formats. And then a new sensitive data model details page. So gives you an idea of what schemas were discovered, what sensitive types were discovered, as well as counts of those various types, schemas, tables, columns, values, etc. So good information there. Good enhancements on DataSafe. That's the cool thing about having a cloud solution like Oracle DataSafe is these updates just automatically become available to you. And Bettina and the team are really great at updating the documentation and trying to keep you informed of what's new. And again, you can find some of those links to what's new on Key Vault and Oracle DataSafe in that GitHub repository for this month. All right. I mentioned getting your hands on things. Over 40 database security live labs are available to you. More than half of them you can do on our dime. So you can run them on Oracle's platform. You press the green button, it spins it up. It gives you access to that compute instance or that cloud environment for maybe an hour, maybe 3 hours, depends on how long the lab is. But you can get your hands on the new version of Key Vault. You can get your hands on Oracle Data Safe. You can get your hands on Database Vault, TDE, Audit Vault, virtually everything you can run either on our platform or in your own OCI tenancy. So really exciting hands-on opportunity with Oracle Database Security products. There's a couple other labs out there too. If you want to do vector or graph or autonomous, there's a lot of labs out there. So we might have 40, but there's probably 200 or 300 additional labs out there as well. So get your hands on it and join us. Join us at CloudWorld, September 9th through 12th. Join us in Las Vegas so you can meet Russ, shake his hand, introduce yourself. And
Rich will buy you a beer.
He got to it before me. Stop by our booth and say hi. And, we've got a whole bunch of presentations out there too. Russ, when I was putting this slide together, I was like, holy cow, we have a ton of security content this year. This is great.
We got really lucky, and well, I wouldn't say lucky. We did really well in our allocation. Last year, our security booth was the #2 booth at all of Oracle. Security is an important topic. And so your allocation for which sessions you get to have this year are based upon the interest that was shown last year.
Yeah.
So we did really well.
You can go out to that QR code. It'll take you to a list of all of these. I'll highlight a couple here for you. Come out and see our Senior Vice President, Vipin, talk about managing ransomware. If you're using, if you're interested in that, Russ, are you giving me surviving a ransomware attack?
I'm going to do that along with Tim Klein. So one really interesting thing this year is the ZDLRA team has sort of recognized, which we've known all along, that backup and recovery is a security function. And so they are combining with us in this presentation, and it'll be kind of what you need to do to survive the attack. Vipin's talking at a lot deeper level about things like blocking the attack, as well as some other things you can do with 23AI. Whereas in this theater session, that's what the THR means. It's just a 20-minute session. We're just going to be covering, these are the basics of what you need to do for surviving a ransomware attack.
Okay. Yep. And then they can come by the booth after and talk to you. Does Tim have a separate booth, or is he hanging out with us this year?
He'll be with us.
All right. Cool. I like when Tim's around. Cool. Yep. Top 5 security features there. I talked about Oracle Data Safe. Come meet Bettina and learn about Oracle Data Safe, kind of some of the capabilities they have there. This is this Angeline with the blocking SQL injections and things here?
It is.
Okay, so our SQL Firewall product manager is going to be talking about that. Is Peter talking about key governance?
Peter's going to be talking about key governance. And if you'll notice the initials on that one, it's PRSH. This is the only product showcase we're doing. That's what PRSH stands for. It's a 45-minute session, very hands-on, live, kind of showing you how a lot of you use Key Vault. A reasonable amount of you use Key Vault. You may not know that this is something Key Vault can do for you. Peter is going to walk you through how to make Key Vault handle SSH key governance.
Oh, cool. Cool. And then these ones, I'm not gonna do that, man. These are all hands-on labs. So you can come in and join us. We have 4 hands-on labs where you can get your hands on Oracle Database Vault, Data Safe, SQL Firewall, as well as Key Vault. So something for everybody at CloudWorld this year. Pretty exciting stuff. All right, Russ, I'm gonna turn it over to you, sir.
Hi, everyone. I haven't been on office hours for quite a while. Before Rich took it over, I was on pretty much every month, but thanks for having me back, Rich. What I want to talk to you today is not any specific feature or function, but more in general about the maximum security architecture and where we think the different things that we talk about in office hours play in reducing risk and making your database more secure. Along the way, because we are in this interesting part of the 23 AI release cycle, whenever there is something new that we've added in 23 AI to support a particular functionality, I'll cover that briefly as well too. As always, please put questions in Q&A. We'll try to get to them quick as we can. Do I have the Q&A panel up? Shoot. Wait a minute. I'm sharing. Where did the...
These windows hide on you sometimes.
They do. They do. Q&A. Is this... Oh, there it is. Q&A. Okay. All right. So here we go. Sorry for the delay here. Again, I said this is an interesting time. If you're not monitoring MOS Note 742.060.1, which this is a blatant plagiarizing copy from, I just went in and grabbed the graphic off of there, updated it this morning. This is what tells you about changes in support cycles and when things get released. So like when we released 23 AI for ODA and for Exadata last month, this was the first place that you would have found out about this. Even before Mike Dietrich's blog or Dom Giles's blog went out. So this is a real good note to use that, notify me when it changes feature within MOS. We are within this section here. We've got it out on the cloud. It's been out on the cloud since last year. We've got it, I'm sorry, it was out free last year. It's been out on the cloud since earlier this year. It was just released on premises for Exadata and ODA last month. And then we are marching forward the general release for Linux, Windows, everything else, just general hardware as the year progresses on. This release is going to be with us for a very long time. If you look, you'll see through 2032 for extended support, which means for me, the remainder of my working life, 23 AI will be a thing. This is, I may get one more long-term release before I finally hang it up and retire, but by 2032, I will definitely not be working anymore. Unless there's massive advances in anti-aging stuff. Like every new release, we have lots of new features in 23 AI. This should be no surprise for you. There are over 300 new features in 23 AI. 39 of those are security features. Okay. So we're going to be talking again about the maximum security architecture. And if you haven't seen the maximum security architecture before, you've probably seen the maximum availability architecture, the maximum resiliency architecture. These maximum, insert name here architectures are just blueprints that we publish to help you meet a certain goal. In the case of the maximum security architecture, that goal is protecting your data against theft or destruction. And unlike some of the other maximum architectures, the MSA is something where very few people do everything. With security, usually what you do is you apply enough security controls to your environment to first meet any regulatory requirements you have, but then second, to reduce your risk to the point where your business is comfortable continuing. Okay? When your business is not comfortable continuing anymore, then you add new controls in. And that is a constantly changing thing, a business's acceptance of risk. We start with something called baseline security. Baseline means this is the stuff we think should be done for every database, regardless of what's in it. This is kind of the minimum standard for what we would like to see for a database. And the very first thing we look at there is assessing the configuration of your database, assessing your overall security. And for that, we have the database security assessment tool. A lot of you are using that. We can see that based on the poll. One thing to remember about the database security assessment tool is we're constantly fixing it, adding new stuff to it, making changes to it as we find new things. So the most recent release of DBSAT is just last month. What we sometimes see is people who will download DBSAT and then use the one they've downloaded forever. This is a case where you don't want to do that. You want to periodically go out to MOS, look at that note, download the latest version so that you're always up to date. Because they're over time, these changes add up, okay? Even the minor releases. As Jim had mentioned when we were doing the pre-meeting talk a little bit, running DBSAT, that's a database by database thing. And it can be kind of tedious if you have 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 to 1,000 databases to go run DBSat in each one. So we have a database cloud service called DataSafe. This is included with any of the DBaaS services. So the base database service, Exadata Cloud service, the Cloud at Customer services, DB at Azure, DB at GCP. If it's a database cloud service, DataSafe is just included with it. And unlike DBSat, DataSafe will automatically run security assessment for you. It'll bring those results into its repository and present them on the screen for you for easy analysis, not just of individual databases, but of your entire fleet. Because DataSafe has multiple versions in it, it's not just a single, each run is not just a single instance. It's able to do differential reporting, and it's able to set a baseline where you can do drift detection. And configuration drift detection is really one of the big reasons that we see problems throughout most security services. So if you're using a database service in OCI, or if you're using Cloud at Customer, or if you're using Oracle at Azure or Oracle Database at GCP, and you're not using DataSafe, it's free. Why the heck are you not using it? This is a really valuable tool. You'll see as we go along, it does a lot of things, okay? Now you've got users that are coming into the database, and you want to see what these users are, make sure that these users that are coming in are properly authenticated. And so we have multiple ways that we can authenticate users in the database, and you want to look at things like password discipline if you're authenticating via password, and hopefully you're authenticating via some stronger mechanism. Just a quick note on authentication. There was a recent, and this is just a couple of weeks ago, uncovering of a very old hacking group, APT41. APT41 is generally attributed to the Chinese military. They were very much in the news 5 or 6 years ago. They had kind of faded from view over the last few years. We haven't really heard much from them. That's why the blog post is they've arisen from the dust. But they've got an attack that is explicitly targeting the Oracle database. Now, the attack chain is kind of interesting. You can see sort of the tools that APT is using to get in. But if you look over towards the right of this slide, you'll see hands-on keyboard activity, and then you'll see a new tool, SQL-ULDR2. This is a hacking tool that APT41 generated. We are fortunate in that in this blog, they actually captured a sample of it, and they have the commands that were used to run it. Now, this is cutting edge stuff. I mean, this is the Chinese military, well, supposedly the Chinese military, and really cutting edge stuff. I want to show you how SQL-ULDR works. You'll notice that it runs as an executable on a Windows system, and that it passes in a username and password to log in. And it takes the output of the database and it dumps that into a comma-separated values file. Now, I managed to get out with a straight face. This is sophisticated and all that stuff. No, this is a simple credential theft. In the process of looking around in your network, they somehow find credentials for an Oracle database, and they log in and steal the data, and they dump it out to CSV and extract it and send it somewhere else. This is the way databases get hacked in the real world. There's not a lot of hand waving, memory buffer overflows. All that stuff can happen, but almost all database breaches are like this. Someone just logs in and steals the data. So in Oracle Database 23 AI, we have helped you to improve your authentication stack by expanding the maximum number of characters that can go into a password. We used to be limited to 30 bytes. Now we're limited to 1,024 bytes. Longer passwords, harder to guess. We have updated our Kerberos stack to the latest Kerberos library, and we give you more capability to determine which Kerberos principal and which Kerberos cache you're using. This latter piece of it, the part you see over on the right-hand side with what looks like a TNS names entry, that is for people that are using Kerberos for service accounts. Originally, we had thought of Kerberos as mostly just for human actors, not appropriate for service accounts, but we do have many customers that are starting to go for service accounts because passwords are dangerous. That's why the AP, look at the slide with APT 41. We added in support for OCI IAM integration. And this one, even though it's a 23AI feature, we backported this to 19C. So long before you had it in 23AI, many of you could be using it in 19C. So if you're running your database in OCI, you can take advantage of that infrastructure, which will give you multi-factor authentication as well as passwordless authentication for application components or batch processes that are running inside of OCI. We added in support for Microsoft Entra ID, OAuth 2 integration. This used to be Azure AD. Almost all of you are likely to be using Active Directory in your organizations. Much like Oracle, Microsoft is constantly developing, coming out with new things. Active Directory is kind of on the way out, still supported, still around, but it's sort of on the way out. Entra ID is what is replacing Active Directory. There's a very good chance that you have a project already in place to move to Entra ID. If you do, you can use that for your databases, including your 19C databases. And again, get away from passwords, use tokens instead. Very old is Radius, Remote Access Dial-In User Service. Just think about what Radius stands for, and that tells you how old it is. And yet this is still in common use for a lot of authentication systems. If you're using Okta, if you're using RSA Secure IDs, if you're using Oracle Access Manager, these are ways that you can integrate those capabilities with your Oracle database to get to multi-factor for your Oracle database. All right. Let's move away from authentication, talk about managing users. In most cases, you manage users inside the database, but if you've got a lot of database users, and we've seen cases where people have 10, 20,000 users in their database, or if you've got a lot of databases, you may want to centrally manage those. And for that, you're going to use features like Enterprise User Security, which is an Oracle 8i feature, or centrally managed users, which we introduced in Oracle 18c. Centrally managed users, the difference between these is Enterprise User Security, that's Oracle database talking to Oracle directory. Could be unified directory, could be virtual directory, could be the old internet directory. But it's Oracle database talking to Oracle directory. What we found over time was Enterprise User Security, the pattern was actually Oracle database to Oracle directory to Microsoft directory to Active Directory, because that's what people wanted was Active Directory. And so we developed centrally managed users, which removes that Oracle directory that you probably didn't want in the first place from the loop and lets you talk Oracle database directly connected to Active Directory. What's new here in 23AI is we have announced the deprecation of Enterprise User Security. Deprecation just means in some future version, we will be de-supporting it and removing it. Deprecated is just our announcement to you that sometime in the future, we recognize that Enterprise User Security is getting kind of old and long in the tooth. We're going to move everything under the umbrella of centrally managed users. If you're using Enterprise User Security now, don't panic. Remember that second slide I showed? 23AI is around through 2032 at a minimum, okay? Next thing you want to look at is users and their entitlements. The most common way databases get breached is through compromised user credentials. That means every time you remove an unnecessary privilege from a user, you are reducing the blast radius if that account is breached. This is a great security activity to be involved in. New in 23AI, we have added in schema privileges. I can grant privileges at the schema level instead of having to do system privileges like select any table on the whole database. I can have select any table on the schema. It also means instead of having to grant select to individual tables, which can be problematic if you make schema changes, add new objects in there, I can do this at one command and I cover just the entire schema. We've added in read-only users. A user has two states now, read-write or read-only. If they are read-write, then all of their privileges are active. If they are read-only, even if they have DBA privileges, if you alter them to be read-only, they cannot insert, update, or delete data. They can't create new data objects. They can't do really anything that would cause redo to be generated. They are purely a read-only user. This is a great solution for the case where you have users who normally should not be able to do data changes, but maybe under very special conditions, there's data corruption or something out there, logical data corruption, not physical. You need to make them the ability to go in and make a change to the data rather than having those privileges active all the time. They're normally read-only. When they need to do changes, you make them read-write and then make them read-only again at the end of that. We added in a new developer role to the database, the DB developer role. This is kind of like the DBA role for developers. It is the list of privileges that a developer is most likely to need. The interesting thing here is we call it DB underscore developer underscore role instead of just developer. The reason for that is there used to be a product called developer, and people still use that product, even though it's 25 years old now. And so there are still a lot of databases out there with a user called developer in it. So you can't have a collision between users and roles in the namespace. So we did DB developer instead. From there, we moved to privilege analysis. Nothing really new in privilege analysis for 23AI, but just a reminder, if you are trying to reduce users' entitlements, privilege analysis is probably your best friend, because if you go to someone's manager and say, here are a list of the privileges that we'll say Rich has in the database. If you come to me and say, here's a list of the privileges Rich has, can I remove any of these privileges? My inclination is going to be to say, no, Rich needs all those privileges, because if you remove something, I don't know the impact of that, and it might stop Rich from doing something that I think is important. With privilege analysis, what we do is we monitor consumption of privileges over a period of time. And at the end of that period of time, you can produce a report of the privileges that a user has, privileges and roles that a user has, but has not used. And that changes that conversation from, can I remove these privileges, to, Rich hasn't used these privileges in the last year. Unless you justify it, I'm going to remove the privileges. Makes it a whole lot easier for the manager to say, well, if it hasn't been used in a year, it's likely that you can remove these without problems. Kind of reduces the chance that you get caught on doing something. All right. Again, nothing really new there. All right, so we've got our users properly privileged, authenticated well, our database is configured, and now we have commands that start coming into the database, and we need to track those commands. The way that we're going to do that is through auditing, right? We want to have a record of certain activities in the database. What's new in 23AI is that unified audit is now the default auditing mechanism and the only auditing mechanism for new databases. The old legacy audit facility is de-supported in 23AI, but it is the most unusual de-support we have ever done. Normally, de-supported means the code is just gone, it doesn't work anymore. In this case, because we were worried about people's ability to upgrade to 23AI, we have done sort of a special de-support. When you take a database that is a 19C database and you upgrade it to 23AI, if you were using the legacy audit in 19C, those legacy audit policies will continue to work in 23AI. You'll continue to collect audit records. They will continue to be written to the same place they were written to before. You won't be able to create new audit policies. Any new audit policies have to be done with unified audit, but you will continue to use your old policies. If you upgrade a 19C database that is in pure unified audit mode, no traditional audit policies there, then it will be pure unified audit. There'll be no capability of making the legacy audit work in that. And of course, if it's a new database, it is all unified audit. So there's a QR code here on the screen, best practices for unified audit. If you haven't jumped on the unified audit bandwagon yet, this is the time, okay? We also added new column-specific audit policies. This allows you to better target your auditing of data within the database. Not a security feature, but just kind of the general, we're always adding new stuff. One of the things we did in 23AI is we increased the maximum number of columns that a table can have. Now, I don't know why you would ever need 4,096 columns, but in 23AI, you can now have over 4,000 columns in a single table. If you did that, if you had 4,000 columns in a table, there's a good chance that 3,998 of those columns are not relevant from a security standpoint, and you don't need to audit their use. And so with column-specific auditing, what you can do is get rid of the majority of the records that would be written for auditing and only audit when someone accesses the columns that you care about, right? Auditing is gathered up by DataSafe. I don't have a bunch of slides on this because DataSafe changes so much, but DataSafe is constantly changing. The most recent thing we've done in DataSafe is we have now given you the ability to do custom alerts. So as audit conditions are coming in, you're no longer reliant just on the alerts that we had predefined for you. You can create your own alerts for audit conditions. Okay? You have network data moving, commands moving into the database, data moving back and forth from the database and the client. And so you want to protect that data in transit. For that, we have network encryption. Oracle Database has two types of network encryption: native network encryption and transport layer security. New in 23 AI is we've updated our transport layer security stack to version 1.3. In addition to being the latest algorithms and the latest version of TLS, this also comes with some nice performance improvements. That's kind of unusual. Usually as you improve encryption, you decrease performance a little bit. But here, because we've optimized, the TLS has optimized the certificate negotiation between client and server, we're seeing about a 20% faster initial connection, and we're seeing about 3% higher throughput. We have also removed support for the very old TLS 1.1 and 1.0. You shouldn't be using those anyway. And we're just at TLS 1.2 and 1.3 that are supported now. Okay. Next thing you want to do as you are working through your security is you want to make sure you understand what data is in your database. The reason you want to do this is to know where your risk lies. Everything we've talked about up until now, this is baseline security. This is the stuff everybody should do. The decision to go beyond the baseline could be driven by regulatory requirements, but hopefully it's driven by your assessment of the risk of this system being compromised. And so you decide to do more things based upon that risk analysis. Okay, so we've reached baseline. Now we move beyond the baseline. And the very first thing that people do is they go beyond the baseline. And apologies for this. I was talking about discover sensitive data. I didn't say you could have done that with database security assessment tool. You could have done that with DataSafe. So all three of these: assess overall security, identify users and their entitlements, discover sensitive data. DVSAT does that. DataSafe does that. Okay. Very first thing people do as they go beyond the baseline is they encrypt data at rest. The way we do that in the Oracle database is transparent data encryption. And in 23 AI, there are several changes for database encryption. One of those is the default tablespace encryption is now AES 256. The reason behind this change is really interesting. NIST has determined that AES 128, our old default, was not quantum resistant. So as we're worried about quantum computing beginning to break existing encryption algorithms, AES 128 wasn't considered to be strong enough. AES 256 is judged to be quantum resistant in the short term. Just yesterday, NIST identified a new finalist encryption algorithm that is long-term quantum resistant. The last time NIST did this, 2 days after they announced it, the algorithm was broken on a laptop. We're going to hold off a little bit to make sure this algorithm stands up, but we will probably eventually adopt newer algorithms for quantum resistance. Also new in 23 AI, tablespace encryption, our implementation of AES, has shifted from CBC, cipher block chaining, to XTS, ciphertext stealing. Okay. Column level encryption, which you shouldn't normally be using, but there are some specific use cases, has also moved from cipher block chaining, but this time to Galois counter mode, GCM. Oracle no longer does business with the Russian Federation. That's a political thing, not a technical thing. Therefore, we have dropped support for the Russian Federation Ghost encryption algorithm. It's not needed anymore since we don't do business with them. We do business with South Korea. South Korea has two government-approved algorithms. One of them is ARIA, the other is SEED. The seed algorithm has been de-supported by the government of South Korea, and therefore it is de-supported in the Oracle database. We continue to support ARIA. Just kind of normal maintenance stuff. We've increased the strength of integrity checks for RMAN. That's now SHA-512 instead of SHA-256. We've also made some improvements to auto login local for Oracle wallets. The local is now considering more factors to more tightly bind it to a host. For those of you that are required to follow the Federal Information Processing Standard, FIPS 140, we have improved the ability to do that in 23AI. Prior to 23AI, there was a separate parameter for TDE, a separate FIPS parameter for DBMS crypto, a separate one for TLS and native network encryption. So there were 3 parameters you had to set. The trouble was most people, they wanted all 3. And if you were being inspected to make sure you complied with FIPS 140 and you'd only done 1 or 2 and missed one, often your inspector would hit you for not having the one you were missing. So in 23AI, we have simplified that. There is now 1 parameter, FIPS 140. It turns on all 4 of these at the same time into FIPS mode. Okay. For anyone doing business with China, in DBMS crypto, we have added support for SM2, SM3, and SM4. These are the required Chinese encryption algorithms and hashing algorithms, okay? Go back. We've also added in new signature and verification algorithms. This is just normal maintenance stuff. And again, normal maintenance, we have de-supported older algorithms. MD4 is no longer supported at all. MD5 and SHA-1 are deprecated. We hope to get rid of those in an upcoming version. Okay. When you encrypt data at rest with TDE, you encounter a new problem. You have to manage the keys for encryption. For that, we have Key Vault. As Rich managed during the announcements, or mentioned during the announcements, Key Vault is constantly updating. The most recent release is 21.9. That's just last month. If you haven't taken a look at Key Vault lately, or if you are using Key Vault and haven't looked at some of the new features, secrets management and SSH key governance are really cool new functionalities that you just kind of get by virtue of having Key Vault. Okay. Database Vault is one of the most powerful security features of the Oracle database. It is generally considered for 3 different use cases. One of those is I don't want privileged users to see data. DBAs shouldn't be able to see application data, for example. The reason this is important is for regulatory requirements. Certain things like Sarbanes-Oxley require, controlling access to data. So does HIPAA, so does PCI. Also, from a risk management standpoint, stolen credentials are the way most databases are compromised. If the DBA credentials are compromised, all of the data walks out of the database unless you have Database Vault protecting it, because you can block the DBAs from seeing data with Database Vault. Database Vault also does a couple of other really interesting things. One of those is it gives you fine-grained control over individual commands in the database. This makes it really easy to do conditions like no one can drop a table unless 2 DBAs are logged in, or no one can do, or this particular user who's going to do batch processing can't log in until this specific time. Just multiple factors. The other thing you get to do with Database Vault is enforce a trusted path to data. I'd mentioned DBA accounts. Those are really popular for hackers to steal. Another one that's really popular for hackers to steal are application service accounts, which are applications used to connect into the database. Those are popular because they're generally easier to get to. If you hack your way onto an application server, there's a really good chance that on that application server, there's a properties file or something that has, here's the host port and said service name for the database. Here's the username and password to log in with. So it's easier to steal those. With Database Vault, you can set up rules that say these accounts can only be used from these IP addresses, running only these programs as these operating system users, and you reduce the chances that a compromised account are going to cause data loss, okay? Not much new, well, there's actually quite a bit new in Database Vault. The first one is very minor. The second one is so big, but I want to wait just a few minutes before I talk about it. So the minor thing is Rich has added in, because Rich Evans is the product manager for Database Vault, by the way. Rich has added in the ability for Database Vault to control the unified audit roles, audit admin and audit viewer. This is important because unified audit is really way to audit from 23A on. Everything else is de-supported. Okay. Next feature we look at is data redaction. Data redaction is kind of a last mile feature. We introduced it in, I think it was in 11G, 11.1 if I remember right, but my memory might be a little bit fuzzy. But the idea with data redaction is if someone selects data from a database and they're authorized to see the data, the very last thing that is checked is a data redaction policy. This is before the data is delivered back to the user. And during that check, we will determine, do they see the actual data or do we do a transformation on that? And the transformation might be, I'm going to show you everything but the last 4 characters, or I'm going to show you only the last 4 characters, or I'm going to replace what you selected with XXXXX or something like that. So think of use cases like you've got a social security number column or a credit card number column where you're supposed to see only the last 4 under most conditions, and under very specific conditions, you can see the entire value. Data redaction is what you would use for this. Now, there is nothing new for data redaction in 23AI through the current release, which is 23.5. However, we are working on a significant update to data redaction that will come soon. And what our goal is for this significant update is to remove some of the conditions, the limiting conditions around the use of data redaction. In its current incarnation, data redaction doesn't work with analytics queries. It doesn't work with group by statements, doesn't work with select distinct. There's a lot of different types of SQL that data redaction doesn't work with. Our goal is to remove as many of those limitations as possible. And the product manager for data redaction, who just happens to be Rich Evans, is looking forward to introducing this new feature and all of the changes on it on an upcoming office hours session. I had mentioned DataSafe, and that DataSafe will take auditing and move that into the DataSafe repository for analysis, alerting, and reporting. I mentioned DataSafe was a cloud service. There are a lot of people who don't like to use cloud services. Sometimes the financial model's not right. Sometimes it's just, I don't want my data sitting up in the cloud. We have another thing that will do this moving of the audit data into a repository for analysis, alerting, reporting, and that's Audit Vault. Audit Vault's been around for a very long time. The first version was Audit Vault 10. Back when Oracle Database 10 was out, and it's been constantly updated since then. One of the more recent changes to Audit Vault is we have added in, just like DataSafe, the ability to assess overall security. So run DBSAT, do differential reporting, do baseline drift reporting, things like that. Identify users and their entitlements, again, detect drift if someone added new users, someone added new privileges, and discover sensitive data. So this is kind of a new feature in Audit Vault and Database Firewall, newish. As the name might imply, it is Audit Vault and Database Firewall. Those two are combined. The Database Firewall component of it sits out there on the network. It's actually a separate server. And it examines data as it travels over the network, basically looking for anomalies, things that you don't identify as part of your database firewall policy, where it can either alert on those anomalies or block them. Specifically, what it's looking at is, do we maybe see a SQL injection attempt coming in? Do we maybe see someone who's using an account from an IP address or a program that it's not normally used from, right? New in 23AI is we have taken the capabilities of database firewall and we have moved them inside the Oracle database. Now, here's why that's important. With database firewall, the only thing database firewall has to go on is what it sees come over the network. So suppose you want to do some security policies around the credit card table, right? And so you go into database firewall and you configure your policy. I want to block access to the credit card table this way, or this kind of statements. I want to monitor, the credit card table and things like that. Well, if someone goes into the database and they do create synonym evil rich for financial credit card data, whatever the credit card table is, database firewall, because it operates outside of the database, doesn't know about synonyms. It doesn't know about dynamic SQL. It doesn't know about bequeath connections that don't come over the network. There's a lot of things database firewall can't do. And this is where SQL Firewall comes in. It's inside the database, and so it does have access to this. Functionally, it's very similar to database firewall, right? You're going to train it on how the application works. You're going to generate an allow list of this is the SQL I allow through. This is the these are the IP addresses and the programs and the users that I allow through. But because it's inside the database, it has broader access into the context of a statement. It has more, you can't go around it like you can with the firewall. For managing your SQL firewall, you have PL SQL commands you can run. You can also do data safe. This is a new feature in data safe, is managing SQL firewall. Now, SQL firewall, a database firewall. We are not getting rid of database firewall. Database firewall still has things that it does that SQL firewall doesn't. SQL firewall has some things that database firewall doesn't do as well. One of the things, database firewall is heterogeneous. It works with Oracle database, MySQL, SQL Server, DB2, Sybase. SQL firewall, not only Oracle only, but Oracle 23 AI only. Okay, so we have both of these things here. Database firewall, before and after value collection. Any of you doing business in India, the new Ministry of Corporate Affairs requirements to have before and after values for changes to ledgers, Audit Vault and database firewall, the only way to do this, okay? In terms of licensing, SQL Firewall is part of Audit Vault and Database Firewall. Very similar functionality, not a separate license. So if you have Audit Vault and Database Firewall, when you update to 23 AI, you have the new SQL Firewall. SQL Firewall is also very similar to Database Vault in its ability to control this person can connect from these IP addresses, running these programs as these operating system users. That use case is very similar to the trusted path use case for Database Vault. And so we have included SQL Firewall as part of Database Vault. If you have a license for Database Vault, you have SQL Firewall. In the cloud, almost all cloud services, database cloud services, include Database Vault. And therefore, unless you're running the most basic cloud services, which would be Base Database Standard Edition or Base Database Enterprise Edition, every other edition is going to include SQL Firewall. Okay. Whew. That's a lot. We're still not done, though. Data-driven security. This in the maximum security architecture is where you apply fine-grained access controls, row-level access controls, column-level access controls. And these are features like real application security or virtual private database and options like label security. What's new in 23 AI is nothing in VPD, RAS, or OLS. What's new in 23 AI is these are used with the AI piece of it. One of the common patterns for advanced artificial intelligence is retrieval augmented artificial intelligence, where you're taking your large language model and you are adding in, enriching that with information from your database. Well, you may have a case where you don't want the large language model to see all of the data in those tables. And this is where these data-driven security commands come in. Kind of our demo environment for this is we set up a procurement application. And if you're in India and you go into the procurement application and you're in a Gen AI session and you're saying, I want to see who my suppliers are for product X, it'll bring up only those suppliers that are allowed for India, and that's done by either VPD or label security or RAS, okay? If you're in Canada and you ask the exact same query, exact same large language model, what you get is the Canadian suppliers, the ones that are authorized for you. And so this idea of using these very fine-grained access controls for more generic generative AI is really powerful, and we're expecting to see a lot more use of these as time goes on. Almost done, I promise. I know I'm running towards the end here. Very common to make copies of databases for test and development. Whenever you make a copy of that database for test and development, you have the exact same amount of risk that you had in production, maybe even a little bit more risk because you probably aren't monitoring those clones as closely. And so the approved pattern for controlling that risk in the MSA is to mask the data, to remove the sensitive data and to replace it with fake data that doesn't carry security risk with this. You can do this with data safe. You can also do this with the Enterprise Manager Pack data masking and subsetting. Not new in 23 AI, But coming soon to a theater near you is a brand new major release of Enterprise Manager. We'll be talking more about this at CloudWorld, but Enterprise Manager 24 is just around the corner. The current version is Enterprise Manager 13. Most of you are probably on 13.5. 24 is just around the corner. Data masking and subsetting, completely new UI, some nice new capabilities, really streamlined operations around data masking and subsetting. So you can look forward to that later this year. Wow. And that gets us to the maximum security architecture. A lot of stuff there, a lot of different cases, a lot of different pieces that we've talked about. Hopefully what you've taken away from this is, one, how all of these fit together and what risk they're supposed to address, and two, what you can look forward to in 23 AI and all of the surrounding database security capabilities that's new to help you better secure your data. Any of this that you'd like to learn more about? Live labs, we always talk about live labs. We put an incredible amount of effort, and it's ongoing. We're constantly updating these, the live labs. But if you want to play with the security features, this is your number one place to go, right? Database security office hours, the session we're in now. Join us live if you can. If not, join us for the recording, okay? And then securing the Oracle database, a technical primer. We are on edition 5 of this. This does consider 23 AI, but we need to make some updates to it. So starting in the new year, we'll be working on the 6th edition, and that should come out sometime next year.